This is Zestology. It's the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation, coming to you from West London, down by the Thames. I'm Tony Wrighton. It's been a busy time, loads going on in London at the moment, and last week you might have heard my podcast recorded live at the Health Optimisation Summit, the first time that London's really seen a summit or a conference, or I like to call them really more like festivals, kind of big health festival in London at Olympia. I know they're going to be doing it again next year. It was a little bit similar to the kind of thing that you might see at Paleo Effect or the Bulletproof Conference in the past or the Upgraded Conference. And then it was here in London, a kind of a mix of health tech, great speakers, plenty of hanging out, some healthy natural wines from Dry Farm Wines as well. Just the whole thing was just great fun and a nice chance to hang out with like-minded souls. So as I said, it was pretty much the first time that London's seen anything like that, and there were some top speakers who gathered around West London who came from all over the world, including one, Harry Adelson, who I've been wanting to speak for quite some time, and finally had the chance to chat to him. Absolute world expert on stem cells, and very modest with it, as you'll hear in this podcast. I think stem cells is one of those topics that I was kind of eager to demystify, because I know they're supposed to be great. I know they're supposed to be at the cutting edge of kind of medicine and what is possible with repairing the human body, but I don't really know much more. And I'm eager to do a podcast where you hear the word stem cells and you don't think, what the hell is that all about? So I said that to Harry beforehand. I said, look, I'm really into stem cells and I really want to know more about them, but I don't really understand what they do, so can we kind of take it quite easy? And some of my questions might seem very basic for a man of your caliber, and it was very sweet and very understanding. So kind of we explain and we talk through how stem cells could be massively beneficial for your health, recovery and repairing your body, especially as you get older. If you've got some kind of issue that's been bothering you, a gammy knee or a dodgy hip or something, you're going to love this podcast. Is it a miracle cure? Are stem cells a miracle cure for health and wellness? I'm not going to answer that question now. That is the first question that I asked Dr. Harry Adelson, and I'll let him give you the answers to that. And let's get on with the podcast. Here he is, Dr. Harry Adelson on Zestology. Okay, well, we are recording. Harry, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome, Tony. Thank you for having me.
My first question, I'm going to turn up the volume a little bit here. Stem cells, are they a miracle cure?
They are neither a miracle nor are they a cure.
Oh, no. Yeah. What a shame.
Stem cells work amazingly well in people who have decent health to begin with. If your cellular function is strong, if you use stem cells, it can very effectively trigger the body's ability to heal itself. But if you are in poor health to begin with, my experience has been that it really does not work nearly as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because when we use the stem cells are triggering the stem cells already in your body to activate. So what it's doing is it's turning on your own body's natural healing ability. But if you're in poor health to begin with and you have no healing response to start, it just doesn't work nearly as well. So where I get the best outcomes are people who are in relatively good health but have pain, have low back pain, neck pain, have arthritic pain, that sort of thing. And those types of people we do very well. And frequently we help people who have neither been helped by conventional medicine nor have they been helped by alternative medicine.
Okay, so lower back pain, arthritis, neck pain, those are the principal things that people come to see you about.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So we treat a lot. We do complex treatments of the spine. People with dehydrated discs. A common injury is people deadlifting and they do it with less than perfect form, and they slide one level of the spine above the other, and they shred the disc, and then We get them some number of years later, and they have this severe midline pain, worse bending forward. And we find that if we inject stem cells directly into the intervertebral disc, it can take the pain completely away in many cases.
I'm well aware that I'm speaking to one of the world's great experts in stem cells here, but I feel like it's a subject that can seem quite complex for people. This might be a simple question, but where exactly do you get the stem cells from, and what do you do?
So we use the stem cells from people's own bodies. So we have stem cells in all the tissues in our body. And so in our body we have liver cells, we have heart cells, we have brain cells, and these cells make up the different organs. But we also have cell types that move throughout the body, like blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells. Well, stem cells are in all the major tissue types. Their job is to maintain the health of their microenvironment. So they are able to recognize when a tissue has been damaged, when it's the surrounding cells have either been damaged or destroyed, and they have the ability to either turn into that type of cell or trigger the growth of the damaged cells. So what we do is we take stem cells from your fat and from your bone marrow, where you have very robust populations, and then we inject them directly into the area where you're having a problem, whether it's an intervertebral disc, whether it's an arthritic knee, whether it's an arthritic shoulder, whatever it is. And what that does is it essentially tricks your body into thinking that it's sustained a new injury, but we haven't caused any real tissue insult, thereby launching the body's natural healing cascade, giving the body a second chance at healing.
So, I mean, it sounds quite a bit like a miracle cure to me. But obviously you're pains to say that it's not. But this is incredibly kind of cutting edge. I mean, how exciting is it to be working in a field where new discoveries are being made all the time?
It's, well, I've been doing the stem cells for 10 years. And I've changed some aspects of it, but I've really been doing more or less the same thing for 10 years. And before that, I was using the same injection techniques, but using platelet-rich plasma, and before that, prolotherapy, which is natural substances. So this has actually been sort of like a slow, gradual evolution for me, just finding more potent formulas for the exact same idea, using the body to heal itself. Yeah. And it is, it's fabulous. Getting people out of pain is a gift. I mean, what greater gift is there than to relieve human suffering that is pain?
Yeah, so you've been using quite a similar technique for the last 10 years. It's not changed that much?
Well, it's really 20 years because I've been doing regenerative injection therapy for 20 years.
Okay, yeah. So with the platelet-rich plasma first, right, and then with the stem cells.
Yeah, that's right. About 10 years ago, I started using bone marrow stem cells. Yeah. That was in 2010, and then 2013 I started adding in stem cells from fat, and then about 2 years ago I started adding in exosomes. Now exosomes are fascinating. Exosomes, so the bone marrow and fat stem cells come from your own body. Exosomes come from a laboratory. So what exosomes are is the lab that I use, they take placental stem cells. They culture expand them, so now you have hundreds of millions of them. Then they basically stress them out. They put them
placental stem cells from another placenta.
Yes.
Someone.
Yeah. So what they do is they recruit these women who are scheduled to undergo a cesarean section, and they screen them for every imaginable communicable disease. If they pass that, then they have a rep present at the birth, and the woman gives birth to the baby, and then they take the placenta. They take possession of the placenta.
Wow.
Then they get the stem cells from the placenta and culture expand them. Then they put the placental stem cells in a stressful culture medium. They basically trick them into thinking that their host is under duress, which forces them to manufacture and excrete these vesicles filled with growth factors that are called exosomes, which are the very active ingredient of stem cells. Now, what makes my stem cells, for instance, 51-year-old stem cells, is as we age, our own stem cells lose the ability to manufacture these very exosomes. So what we do is we take the exosomes that have been separated from the other person's stem cells. So this does not contain the other person's genetic material or DNA. we add them to our own stem cells. The membranes are identical, so what we think happens is our own stem cells actually absorb them into themselves, thereby functionally making our stem cells that of a younger person. And what I found since I started using them is my results in the older population, sort of over the age of 65, people react like a younger person, because I get very consistent results with young people when I'm just using people's own stem cells. But with the older population, it's more hit or miss. Since I've started using exosomes, I've found that it's as if the older people have the same reaction to the treatment as the younger people do.
So, I mean, what happens? Like, let's say, okay, am I classed as a younger person or an older person in your clinic?
You're very young.
Oh, good, okay. Let's say I come to you and I've got a dodgy knee, and I have the treatment. I mean, would it instantly feel better? Or?
No. So what we found is that most pain generation from chronic pain problems are actually, the pain generation is occurring on the microscopic level. It's about the health of these tissue beds. It's about the disarray of collagenous fibers. It's about the microcirculation and the concentration of the nerves that run along the microcirculation. And this takes time to fix. So for like a dodgy knee, as you say, the conventional treatment for that is a steroid injection, cortisone injection. So a cortisone injection, when it's done properly, works right away, but it only lasts 2 months, and then it wears completely off. This is the opposite. This takes 2 months for it to work. I mean, you're not going to get any benefit for 2 months. And really, sometimes it takes up to 6 months to completely work. But then once you get the results last years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, actually. I suppose the reason I picked a dodgy knee is because I've always had dodgy knees. They're probably the best they've ever been now. They're pretty good now. But when I was 18, 19, I struggled, and I had cortisone injections, and I have to say, they didn't help.
Yeah.
It wasn't a particularly pleasant experience having a cortisone injection either. So you remember all the hair came out of my knee. There was like loads of kind of spots on it. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily work anyway, getting a cortisone injection, does it?
It frequently doesn't. The scientific data is really dismal. It actually is no better than placebo, and it actually contributes to the problem, because by the same mechanism by which it temporarily takes away the pain, it also disallows normal tissue healing to occur. It actually accelerates the degenerative process.
Yeah. Do you do this stuff on yourself?
Oh, absolutely. That's how I got into it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, this started out when I was in naturopathic school. I had a shoulder injury. I was rock climbing at quite a high level, and I tore a piece of the labrum in my shoulder, the cartilage in my shoulder, and I saw a surgeon.
You tore the cartilage
in my shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite painful, and worse than that, I was planning a climbing trip to France that summer, and it ran the risk of ruining my trip. So I saw a surgeon, and he said, well, I could put a scope in your shoulder and cut out that piece of cartilage, or I can give you a steroid injection. He said the problem with surgery is it'll give you problems later in life, and the problem with the steroid injection is it's only going to give you short-term relief. Well, it didn't make sense to me, and I was in naturopathic school, and I was 25 years old, and we didn't have, this was back in the mid-90s, we didn't have the word biohacking then. I'm not sure we had the word hacking then, but I knew, I was in naturopathic school learning that ways that the body could heal itself, and I found out about prolotherapy, which is the predecessor of stem cell therapy, the injection of natural substances to launch the body's healing cascade. I had it done to me, it worked so well, and that's what set me on this path.
Right, wow, that's amazing. So, and I bet, just on that topic, do you get quite a few athletes coming to you, like kind of pro-level athletes?
Some, I get more than that. I get a lot of biohackers. I get a lot of sort of ranchers, farmers, oil field workers, people who use their bodies, and I get a lot of retired professional athletes. Okay. Active professional athletes is kind of a different story, because the really elite ones, anything they do has to go through their orthopedic surgeon, which has to go, and their agent. There's all these sort of layers of complexity, and I personally don't really enjoy working with high-level athletes, because it's like, pedigree, hybrid horses. It can be quite difficult.
Yeah. Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by Ketoko MCT oil. pretty much the purest MCT oil on the market. If you head to Amazon and you type in Ketoko, so that's keto with a KO on the end, you'll find Ketoko MCT oil. It is 99.8% C8 oil delivered to you in a glass bottle, and it's non-drip. And non-drip is the kind of holy grail, by the way, of MCT oils, because most of them, they just kind of dribble down the side, and once you've got it on your clothes, that's it. You might as well write off that t-shirt, because MCT oil ain't coming out in the wash. So it's Ketoko MCT oil. If you head to Amazon and type in Ketoko, keto with a KO, you'll find that. You'll find the green powder, which has only 2 grams of net carbs per serving, and all sorts of different greens in it, including alfalfa and celery, cucumber and all the rest of it, and only 2 grams of net carbs, and also a collagen powder as well. Enter the code Zestology, you'll get 10% off, and I'd love to know what you think. Okay, now back to the show.
So you've used them on your shoulder many years ago. Have you used stem cells anywhere else?
I treated a torn hamstring. I've treated, anytime I get injured, and there's been lots of injuries along the way, sure.
And you can use them in the face as well, can't you, stem cells?
Sure, I don't, but I have a partner at my clinic where I do all the work.
Is that Amy?
That's Amy,
yeah. Okay, so Amy's been on the podcast.
Right,
I just said hello to her just now.
Yeah, we work
great.
together.
Yeah.
I do the orthopedic injections. She does the cosmetic injections.
Yeah, I've been long promising myself a vampire facial or some sort. It's all quite exciting. Wow. And how do you think this field's going to develop over the next few years?
Well, I really don't know the answer to that. I'm just going to tell you I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. The most difficult part of the whole thing is navigating the legislative landscape. In the states, we have to be compliant on a state level, and we have to be compliant on a federal level, and it can be quite complex. And so my goal is to just stay on the cutting edge and off the bleeding edge, because I have some of my friends now who are, potentially going to go to jail over this stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that because that's just because they've broken the law? The law says they need to do something.
Well, the law is a bit vague, and so the FDA sort of came out and decided to make some examples of some of the clinics, and your choice is to either comply or fight the man, and these, my friends decided to take the fight to the government.
I heard...
So, do you edit a little bit or no?
Oh, I can.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
But it's fine. It's all pretty relaxed.
All right.
Yeah. Someone just came to get their jacket from
Yeah,
behind us.
I was sitting on her jacket.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Because I learnt quite a bit more about stem cells from Mel Gibson going on Joe Rogan's podcast, which I'm sure a lot of people would have heard. And Mel Gibson, for anyone who didn't hear that, sent his dad to get stem cell treatment in Panama, I think. It all sounded quite complicated. The reason that he couldn't do it in the States.
So there's a difference there. So the reason Mel Gibson wanted his dad treated was for fragility of aging. And to treat that, what you need a very high volume of young, robust stem cells. And in order to do that, you really need culture expanded, like umbilical cord cells. What I treat is musculoskeletal pain, and just using somebody's own cells supplemented with exosomes works very well for treating musculoskeletal pain. But for treating fragility of aging, in that case, you really do want culture-expanded umbilical cord cells, which we're not able to do in the U.S. So he sent his dad to Neil Riordan's clinic in the Stem Cell Institute in Panama City and had amazing outcomes. And that's a great clinic, by the way, the Stem Cell Institute.
And Joe Rogan was on that podcast. I think was saying he's had stem cells himself.
Mm-hmm.
That podcast probably was quite good for you and everyone else's businesses.
The big one for me was when I did a full body stem cell makeover on Ben Greenfield, and Greenfield went on Joe Rogan's podcast and showed video footage of his procedure with me. That was the big boost for me.
Well, now you've been on Zestology. It's going to be the game changer.
Wow, this is it. Think of the chicks.
You were a little bit too sarcastic there. Now, something I've asked everyone on this podcast is, what is one book you would recommend and one tip for living with more energy and vitality?
I would say the one book would be Growing Old Isn't for Sissies, which is a photo book of senior athletes. So it's photographs of people age 70 and older, up to over 100, of people who've been athletes their entire lives and continue to engage in their sport. And there's very short little interviews with each of them about, just their experience with their sport and how it's helped them towards longevity. And what that did for me is it really made me reconsider my sport. My sport used to be rock climbing. And rock climbing is a wonderful pursuit for a lot of reasons, but it's not a great sport to get old with because it's very hard on your hands and feet. It really tears up your hands and feet, and I need my hands and feet. So I got into kite surfing, which is much gentler on the body. And when you kite surf and you go to these destination kite surf places, you see these salty old dudes, these guys well into their 80s, out shredding, and it's amazing. So that I got it about 15 years ago. I switched from rock climbing to kite surfing, and it was largely because of that book, Growing Old Isn't for Sissies.
Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Did you see that film that won the Oscar? Is it called Free Solo?
Free Solo, yes.
What a film.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, these rock climbers are absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, that's a special breed. Those are guys who are free soloing, and that's a 1% of 1% of 1%.
Yeah. So you weren't climbing up Yosemite.
I was doing those types of climbs, but with a rope.
With a rope. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen, with
Which
a
is
rope,
hard enough.
I still think it's a little bit more than I'd want to do.
Yeah.
But, okay, that sounds excellent. But then what about one tip for living with more energy and vitality?
I'm a strong believer in the 4 pillars of health, which is sleep, exercise, diet, and emotional balance. And as long as you get a B+ in all 4 of those areas, you get a cumulative A. So I don't think you need to go too crazy on any of them. But what I see a lot of times is people work their guts out to get an A in 3 of them, but they get a C in 1 of them. And I think in that case, you get a D cumulatively.
Yeah, that's very.
So just shoot for mediocrity in all areas.
No,
shoot for a B+.
Yeah,
that's not mediocre. Yeah, shoot for a B+ in all 4 of those areas. And emotional balance, I think, is an important one. I had an experience 2.5 years ago. I had a bacterial infection of my heart, and it resulted in a stroke. And then I lost the ability to use the right side of my body. I lost the ability to speak. And then I got the news that I was looking at a 7-hour open heart surgery to replace my aortic valve. Turns out it was all from cavitations. It was from bad dental work. But people say, if you lose your health, you lose everything. Well, I did lose my health. And I don't feel like I lost everything because I had love in my heart for my family. Sorry, I saw your baby. Aww. I saw your baby, and I miss my kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's really sweet. Obviously, I've been here with my baby, and it's been a different experience being here with the family. But obviously, that's kind of really resonated with you. Yeah. So this was obviously a life-changing moment for you having this.
It was a long road back. And
you look at an absolute picture of health now.
Thank you.
You're doing the kite surfing as well.
It was a lot of work. I'm happy to say 6 months after my surgery, I was kite surfing in freezing cold, sharky water of the Oregon coast.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's incredible.
So,
God, I'm not surprised you're emotional. This is just an absolutely life-changing...
Yeah. Well, I'm jet lagged too. I got 2 hours sleep, and then I gave my talk this morning.
Great. So. I've caught you in an emotional time. That's right. Thanks for opening up.
Sure.
It's nice. And I suppose the final question I wanted to ask you is that I know that a lot of people listening to this would think this is something that could really benefit me, but it just sounds a bit out there. I mean, would you encourage people to just kind of look into it?
Well, I think it depends on how much pain you're in.
Yeah.
If you're not in that much pain, it probably does sound out there. But if you have a lot of back pain, if you have a lot of neck pain, and you don't want your spine fused, and you don't want more steroid injections, then I don't need to encourage you because you're already going to check it out.
Yeah. Harry, thanks so much. Thanks for opening up as well. I really appreciate it. Us Brits aren't very good at opening up, but we're getting better over the years. So I really appreciate it, and we'll put all your details and where to find you on the show notes as well.
Outstanding.
How long are you here for?
I'm going to go home tomorrow. This is the longest I've been away from my kids.
Really?
So, Yeah, they're 2 and 3.5. So
Are they?
yeah,
2 and 3.5? How much sleep are you getting when you're at home?
We're actually doing pretty good these days, but I'm loath to report we let them sleep in the bed with us, which is probably going to ruin their lives. But
but it's probably so warm and
it's
cuddly.
very sweet. Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, safe journey back. And thanks for the interview.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you to Dr. Harry, and thank you for listening to Zestology. Really enjoyed that podcast, really enjoyed meeting Harry. Obviously plenty going on in the background, and I'm sure you understand that was all part of the Health Optimization Summit. But it was nice that there was so much going on, and we still had quite an emotional moment there, didn't we? So Harry's now back in his home in America, and hopefully we will get a chance to connect again at some point. And there is one more podcast coming from the Health Optimization Summit, because John Gray, friend of the show, the best-selling hardback non-fiction author of all time, is back next week. John did a presentation which can only be described as electrifying at the Health Optimization Summit. And afterwards, everyone was coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, did you see John Gray's presentation? It was outrageous and very funny and brilliant." And I actually didn't see it because I was recording a podcast with Dr. Harry Adelson, but I have seen it before and I know how brilliant he is, and I then got a chance to sit down with him afterwards and record a podcast for Zestology. It's fair to say that next week's podcast is X-rated, so we see you then for that. In the meantime, thanks for listening to Zestology. Remember to check out Ketoko MCT oil on Amazon UK, not .com unfortunately at the moment. Maybe that's the next stage of world dominance, but on Amazon UK it's the purest MCT oil in terms of C8 oil out there, or maybe the equal purest, but you get my drift. And it's in a glass bottle and it's non-drip, and it's going to give you a bit more energy, and that's what this podcast is all about. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.